Welcome everyone to our 2018 State of the Young Child dinner. This is the first year that we've had a dinner with the intention of having more child care providers in the audience, and it worked because we have about 30, which is awesome. So thank you all for coming. Next up, we have our Mayor, John Engen, here to give a welcome. So let's just turn our attention to him, and he will take it from here.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I was just earlier today at a gathering for the State of the Middle-Aged Man. This is much more interesting and uplifting than that one was. I'll be mercifully brief. Do want to bid you welcome and also thank you for the work that you do. What I've learned over the course of my service as mayor is that when there is a need in the community and there is intentionality around that need, we get things done, and we're lucky to have folks who show up again and again and again to get things done. And in the case of getting things done on behalf of children who often have a limited voice or a really loud one, there are lots of things going on in our communities, in our state, and our nation that aren't about taking care of those kids. So when we gather in a room like this and we exchange ideas and we turn those ideas into action, the chances of us making the world a little bit better place, one kid at a time, seem much improved. So thank you for all you do. Enjoy the chicken, enjoy the program, and have a great evening. It's now my pleasure to turn the microphone over to a longtime advocate for children and families and education, Missoula County Commissioner Jean Curtis.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. Kind of old home week with Sharon and I, because we both started preschools / daycares at about the same time. So I had a daycare in my home for 9 years, and also served on the Child Care Association board here in Missoula and on the State Association board. So I got to dig around in the jewelry box tonight and find my little kid pin. So that was fun. So, early childhood champions, all of you are champions. The work that you do is so important. You're investing yourself in the future of children. And there's so much research that shows that value of early childhood education. I loved looking at the table decorations, and one of them had meditation. So, of course, there's been a lot of focus the last quite a few years on what do we do to protect our schools and all of those kinds of things. It starts here. If we teach kids how to meditate, how to, use their words as we tell them when they're little, hopefully they don't turn into somebody that you don't want to walk into the school someday. So thanks for your work there. That return on investment is high. Many of us have worked to change the systems that children grow up in. Moms who work are not seen as shirking their duty as a mom anymore. Child care workers are not just babysitters. Don't you wonder where that word comes from? I thought, well, sometimes you almost have to sit on them, that's true, but probably the better is that you get to sit in the corner and rock one of them once in a while, so that's a great idea. There is some financial help to pay for child care still. Sharon probably helped, but I remember in the 80s that we did work hard to lobby the Montana legislature to have sliding fee scale to help pay for child care. Businesses recognize the value of child care and its impact on productive workers. I recently was at a function that I sat next to Kim Luttrell, who's the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and she was telling me that that's one of the big issues that they're working on. We need more child care availability for businesses to work. And we all saw this week that what happens when one person chooses to do really silly things in a daycare center. My neighbor's granddaughter was in that daycare, so now she's very tired this week. She's been watching her. So what can we do as a community for early childhood success? Well, Missoula, the city and the county know what to do. Safe, healthy communities are important. We've invested in the built environment so that there's safe places, there are parks, there are open space, there are trails, there are swimming pools. There's a free bus here in town. The YMCA has a program where kids that are in the 6th grade, as they get a little older, can go. So there are lots of things to do. Culture, we have libraries, we have branch libraries throughout the county. The new library will have the Children's Museum in there, and it will be free. We have the Missoula Art Museum, the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula. I know some of you have probably taken children there on field trips. We have Spectrum. We have a butterfly museum. We have camps and scholarships and the children's theater. Last year we started free admission to the fair. That was a very big success. We'll do that again. In the rural areas, we also have branch libraries. There will be traveling trunks to take some of the exciting things that will be at the new library there. In the health department, I've served on the committee to work on Let's Move Missoula. People in eastern Montana are hoping we move it to Idaho. That is not the point. It's to get kids active. It's to have morning movement before school, which has proved to, research-wise, to be the most effective thing you can do is to have kids active before school so that their brains kick on. Of course, they need to have some food to go with that, which is really good. Even our new food bank has books from the library, and it has a thing for Spectrum. So thank you for all of your work. I thought I would end with one of my favorite poems that I haven't read for a while. All I ever really needed to know, I learned in kindergarten, which most of you have probably read, by Robert Fulghum. Most of what I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sandbox at the nursery school. Until it was written a while ago, because we used to call them nursery schools. These are the things that I learned. Share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, don't take things that aren't yours, say you're sorry when you hurt someone, wash your hands before you eat, flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and think some and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work every day, some. Take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Be aware of wonder. Remember the little seed in the plastic cup. The roots go down, the plant goes up, and nobody really knows why, but we're all like that. Goldfish and hamsters and white mice and even little seeds in the plastic cup. They all die, so do we. And then remember the book about Dick and Jane. We really age ourselves. And the first word that you learned, the biggest word of all, look. Everything you need to know is in there somewhere. The golden rule and love and basic sanitation, ecology and politics and sane living. Think of what a better world it would be if we all, the whole world, had cookies and milk about 3 o'clock every afternoon, and then laid down on our blanket for a nap. I was ready for one this afternoon. Or if we had a basic policy in our nation and other nations to always put things back where we found them, cleaned up our own messes. And it is still true, no matter how old you are, when you go out into the world, it's best to hold hands and stick together. Thanks for your work. It is my turn to introduce Deborah Franson from Senator Tester's office.
Thanks, Jean. Senator Tester is sorry he can't be here this evening. He is in Washington, D.C., but I know he would prefer to be here with all of you. So, Message from Senator Tester. Thank you for inviting me to share a few words this evening. I especially want to thank the Missoula Forum for Children and Youth for putting on this important event. For more than 20 years, you've been working hard to inspire a generation of resilient children who are empowered to make healthy choices. Missoula is lucky to have you, and as your senator, I'm proud to fight along on your side. I've worked with both parties to secure more resources for early childhood education. We know that what children learn from ages birth to 5 set the stage for their entire life, and it's critical that they start out on the right foot and have a fair shot at success. I've also fought to strengthen families' access to substance abuse resources and to make sure they have the ability to get back on their feet and keep their families intact. It's my job to serve you, so please keep your foot to the pedal and make sure your priorities are heard in Washington, D.C. My door is always open to you. Congratulations to this evening's early childhood champions. You're the folks who go the extra mile to serve young children and their families with compassion, experience, and knowledge. I look forward to hearing from you as we work together to improve the lives of Missoula and Montana's children and their families. Thanks again. Keep up the great work. Sincerely, Senator John Tester. Thank you.
It's really great that we have elected officials that are so accessible and willing to come and look forward to this every year, and others that reach out to us with the interest in sharing because they value early childhood and early childhood education. So we really appreciate that. For those of you who don't know, I know a lot of you in this room. I'm Anna Semple. I coordinate Healthy Start Missoula, which is our local early childhood coalition here in Missoula County. And we have a really great group that meets once a month and plans events like this and really works to identify where are those needs that we have? How can we bring people together around those needs in early childhood, and how can we organize things, do outreach, make a difference in that way? And so this is one of those times. And what we really realized is that it's been a little bit of a hard year for a lot of people this year. We usually talk about state of the young child and talk about events that have happened or issues that are kind of arising. And there's been a lot of funding cuts this year. There's been a lot of just upheaval and changes in reimbursement and interesting things in different centers and organizations' lives. And so we really realized that this year we needed to honor people for the good work that they're doing, because there is good work happening every single day from every single one of you in this room. And yeah. And we really value all of you here as all being early childhood champions and all being people that are really making a difference in young children's lives day to day, which is a hard job. It might be really rewarding sometimes, and it might be really hard others. So we really recognize that, and that's what tonight is about. And so with that in mind, we decided to start an annual award, which is our Early Childhood Champion Awards, and this is the first year that we've done them. We're really excited that we ended up selecting 2. We have one award that is a professional award or leadership award for more statewide work, and another award that is for direct service, so that day-to-day work, which is just as valuable. We need both ends of that spectrum. So I have Jacole Johnson's going to come up and present the first award. So come on up, Jacole.
Thank you, Anna. So tonight, along with the nominations from Dana Lozier and Lucy Morose, I am proud to honor Dr. Julie Bullard as our first annual Early Childhood Champion. Julie has been an influential member of the early childhood community for more than 30 years, and although she will be retiring this year, her legacy will never be forgotten. Julie's teaching journey started when she was a young girl, setting up a school and playing teacher with her younger siblings while growing up in Malta, Montana. I had the privilege to be one of Dr. Bullard's students at the University of Montana Western in Dillon, where she began teaching in 1989. Not only is Julie a fantastic professor, but she has also worked tirelessly on committees to promote early childhood education across the state of Montana for the length of her career. She has assisted the Montana Faculty Learning Outcome Council, the Montana Early Childhood Advisory Council, the Montana Early Childhood Higher Education Consortium, and the Montana Early Care and Education Career Development Task Force, as well as many others. Julie has contributed her expertise at a national level, serving in various working groups and development panels with many organizations, including the NAEYC, Head Start, and the National Council for the Accreditation of Teacher Education. Dr. Bullard has inspired countless teachers to advocate and fight for higher pay for early childhood educators, and she has played a major role in the creation of high-quality environments for our nation's youngest children. Julie helped write the Montana Early Learning Standards, which I know we're all familiar with, the National Standards for Early Childhood Teacher Education, and the State Curriculum Standards for Pre-K. Dr. Bullard also helped design and implement the Bachelor Degree in Early Childhood Education, the Master of Education in Early Childhood Education, and the Master of Education in Advanced Early Childhood Education, the only 2 master degrees of their kind in the state. Julie also coordinated a task force to promote further understanding of the current crisis of infant-toddler care in Montana. Dr. Bullard has written textbooks and has published many articles that have worldwide readership and continue to influence and assist colleagues and early childhood professionals every day. Her publication, Creating Environments for Children Birth to Age 8, serves as the gold standard in the instruction and development of early childhood education settings across the country and internationally, having been translated into various languages. Julie also created an international journal, the Journal for Early Childhood Scholarship and Innovative Practice. We are very lucky to have Julie here in Montana, constantly leading and guiding our future early childhood educators. Thank you, Julie, for your years of service and dedication to the early childhood field, the next generation of Montanans, and the teachers who care for them during their earliest years. Thank you, Julie.
Being a, oops, I don't want to break it, I just want to bend it down a little. Being a professor, it's really hard not to take an opportunity to be able to say a few words. So as you get ready to retire, you get to reflect back on your life. And I know it's been kind of a discouraging time with losing funding in many, many programs across the state. However, when we take the long view, it's incredible how far we've come in early childhood during my career. So I think back, one of my first positions after getting my bachelor's degree was working with children that were abused and neglected. And so there was this one story I wanted to share with you. Every day there was this little 4-year-old that was looking out the window, and neighbors would see this child for hours looking out the window. And finally, someone contacted the child, child DPHS at the time. And it's what was happening was this child had a single father, and this father was very low income. And this father every day would have to go to work, and he had no support. So he would lock the child in the bedroom to keep the child safe so that he could go to work. Because at that time, we had no money for supporting families that were low income with childcare. And today, we have that. And in fact, we almost take it for granted that we have it. We forget there was a time when we didn't. And recently, just very recently, Congress passed that legislation again and added $5.8 billion to this fund. So at this point, we'll be able to serve even more families. And so when you take the long range look at it, we get small setbacks as we go along, but we've kept really important things, including the Child Care Development Block Grant. But that began because of tenacity. It took 20 years of advocacy to get that. It took 20 years of coordinated effort. It also took building coalitions, and it took all of us meeting with people that had very, very different political opinions than we had, very different ideas about early childhood than we had, looking for ways, looking for an intersection between what that group thought was important and what we as early childhood advocates thought were important, and then finally being able to speak that language. And in the case of the child care, the language is welfare reform. Once we realized that that was the intersection, that they wanted welfare reform and we wanted high quality child care, and that was where that intersected. That was when we finally got funding after 20 years. So I would just encourage all of us to remember that we've got a lifetime of advocacy that we'll need to continue to do. And as a result of advocacy, we've really achieved remarkable things for children and families and for our profession. And so I just want to really thank you. Thank you for this award. And thank you to all the advocates in this room who work tirelessly every single day to make sure that we're serving our youngest children and families in the best possible way we can. So thank you.
It's hard to follow up on that, but luckily the group I'm introducing, their accolades speak for themselves. So, since 1980, Lolo Preschool has offered high-quality early childhood care and services. Lolo Preschool joined STARS when it launched in 2014 and has steadily been progressing through the levels until it most recently reached the level of Star 4. It's been accredited through NAEYC for the last 15 years. It's one of the only 2 Star 4 programs in Missoula County. Lolo Preschool Center staff has completed certified preschool training and the pyramid model training, among other requirements to reach this level. Lolo Preschool was selected to partner with Lolo School District, LEAP, as I just learned, to launch a pre-K program under Montana's STARS preschool demonstration program. They also are instrumental in mentoring the LEAP teachers and principal as well. Lolo Preschool offers before and after school care to the children served by the school district. Since their inception, they have offered high quality early childhood services, including many high needs children. Congratulations.
Of course, Julie's hard to follow. I agree. I didn't plan anything to say. As usual, I just go on a whim, but thank you for the award. The Lolo Preschool, I have been there since 1980, since its inception. So learned through, again, the paths of different things that have happened throughout Montana for the last several years and how it has changed so much with all the help of advocacy and all the help of childcare resources. Lolo Preschool wouldn't be where they are today if they didn't have a great crew that was willing to go to all the trainings and take good care of the kids in our community. And then all the help from childcare resources along with Lucy and Laura Lee, our coach, and everyone that keeps us in order with all of our paperwork and helping all of the students in the community as well as the other providers in Lolo too that also work together with us to make sure that we're covering as much ground as we can in our community. So thank you.
All right. We had quite a few nominations for our first year, and next year we look forward to having more. Ooh, excuse me. So if you are interested in nominating somebody that you know, whether it's an individual, an organization, there are amazing superstars in our community, and I feel like there's a lot more people to be honored. So keep that in mind next year and keep your eye out for those nomination forms. And thank you to all of our presenters and award winners. All right. So now we get to talk a little bit about the state of the young child. What is it? I'm not going to put a ton of stats in your face, and I'm not going to talk about too many things. More, I'm going to talk about a couple issues that have been noticed, some data points that are noticeable in our community that we might need to work on, but also looking at the resources that we have to be doing that. And so we really want to keep this on the hopeful side. One, because you guys are the ones already doing the good work, so we want to honor that. We don't want to hold you accountable necessarily for the places where we're missing, but also know some ways where you can plug into that if you want to help the effort, and just know that you have a whole community that's supporting you in some different ways. So thank you for being here at this dinner and in your job, because without you, we would have a lot of little ones without safe, good places to go. We'd have a lot of little ones that were not learning and not developing in the way that we would want them. So it's pretty important. All right, so the hard stuff that we'll do first, and then don't worry, we're going to talk about the hopeful. 4 out of 10 children are entering kindergarten not ready to read. So I read this in this room that 6 out of 10 are, and you guys have really done a lot to make that happen. And so without your work, we would not have that 6 out of 10. And this is where we need to start really thinking as a community, not just child care providers, but all of us in this room, all the service providers. Because we know literacy doesn't just come from reading, it also comes from being in a place where your brain's ready to read, and in a safe family where you are able to develop and grow in a way where reading comes. So we really are looking at ways that, how can we reach those extra 4 children? Where are the pockets in our community where maybe there are more kids that are struggling than other pockets, where we can get rid of those disparities and kind of make sure it's even for everybody? So just know that's one thing that we're keeping an eye on here in Missoula. We'd love to hear some ideas from you. If you ever want to talk about it, I'd love to get coffee and sit down with you, and so would a lot of other people. And the other big issue that we're noticing is the number of children in foster care in the last 5 years has doubled in Missoula County. And that is also true for the number of legal cases filed. They have, I think, tripled in the last 5 years. And so we have a lot of kids in pretty unsafe situations that are being placed in foster care. And what that means, because we really know that there's a whole spectrum of health in a family, right? From that mythical family where everything's great and they have all the support they need, which doesn't quite exist, but that's fine, all the way down to families that are getting shakier and don't have as much support as they need, and then cross over in the line of unsafety and for the child. So we really know that even though we see these numbers of cases reported, there's this bigger spectrum that we need to look at of families that are at high risk because they don't have the support networks, whether it is healthy families, whether it's skills that they need to develop as parents and learn, what have you. There's a lot of different reasons. And it is a science, and we are learning a lot about what that is and ways to reduce those stresses. We have a lot of great home visiting programs. You'll hear me plugging those in the training. We have respite services. We have outreach materials for both, so please hit me up if you have families you'd like to reach with those. But we really need to work together, because child care providers are the ones that are seeing kids day after day, that maybe have relationships with families that maybe you could say, hey, there's some really, you could drop a kid off at respite for a few hours and get a break and build a relationship. And it's really a non-threatening thing, right? It's not criticizing their parenting skills. It's just saying, hey, maybe you need a little break. Home visiting services have been shown to do amazing things, and we have amazing resources in Missoula that aren't full, right? Before age 5, our services aren't full. After that, it gets hard. So you guys are some of the only people, you and the physicians, right, are the ones that see them before age 5. And we also have great social service providers in this room. I'm not trying to neglect you, and you guys are the ones helping with that as well. All right, so as you're looking at this kind of heavy information, I want you to recognize that parents understand the work that you do and how important it is for their kids. And so we got some quotes. We had an event at the Carousel last night and had a lot of families coming through. We were going to try and keep track, but they just kept going around again and again, and so it was kind of hard to tell how many were there. But there was a consistent full carousel the entire time with a line. So they wrote some quotes on our board about their early childhood champions in their child's lives, and they had some wonderful things to say. And I know that the kids in your care, the families, have some wonderful things to say about those individual teachers that have bonded with their kids, about those service providers that have made parenting easy and easier for them. And so we'll see that here in a second. We got the long ones up front. The short ones are coming. Don't worry. I'll make you read now. just understanding that that teachers, childcare providers are giving 110%. I attend some of the AEYC meetings in our local chapter, and I'm always put to shame by how early everyone gets up and how late they work, and I get a lunch break and they don't get a lunch break. It's amazing. It's really, truly amazing. So that you're here now getting a training and you'll be here till late is pretty amazing as well. Social service providers also are dealing with some pretty hard emotional stuff and are doing it day after day after day. And really, these events, we really want to be a chance for you to recharge. So I think this one is more directed to both, helping focus our attention on the children and their needs and learning ways to do that and how to take care of parents themselves so that they're able to do that. And this goes for any of you who work with kids, their ability to calm their son. So I think that's pretty cool. Because we are going to be talking about self-care today, just as a wrap-up and a tie-in, because we have these big issues, right? We have the literacy issue, we have the child abuse and neglect issue. We're not going into the cost issue because you guys know you don't get paid enough and parents know they're paying more than they can, right? But you're not the people to talk to about that. We're continuing to work on that, and I'll talk to you in a second about some groups that are actively looking at it that you're welcome to join. But what we did is have childcare facilities create different centerpieces for you about how they help kids stay calm or what kids do to stay calm. So we have the Missoula Early Learning Center provided the trees for us, lots of great children's pictures. And then the YMCA provided the child art in the centers with the flowers, and then the children wrote what they do to stay calm and to calm down. And the children are young, so you can't always understand the writing quite yet, but you know that they put a whole lot of thought into that. And the letters look beautiful, so that's pretty cool. We're all dealing with underage preschool kids and under, so pretty neat. And we really appreciate that extra work and bringing kids into the room that way, because this is about kids, right? We have a bunch of adults that get together to talk about them, but it's really about kids. So we have some really exciting new early childhood partners. One of those is the Missoula Early Childhood Collective Impact. That's housed at the United Way. And basically, it is looking at bringing together higher level people to think creatively about some new issues. Healthy Start has been meeting for a long time, and we are working really side by side with this group and in conjunction whenever possible. So are there any Collective Impact members in here? We got a few. Dana, Mike, I know, Heather. I don't see Heather, but she's one too. So we have some people on our steering committee, and we've broken into 4 different really specific groups. Access to quality early care and education. That's a both number of slots, maybe infant care slots. Also looking at the quality. Maybe we haven't decided what projects we're going to be tackling yet, so it could be, infusing some support into childcare that have a lot of best beginning students and maybe don't have as much income coming in on top of that stipend. It could be working on building new facilities so we have new infant care slots. There's a whole range, and that one we're really just in that development stage. We would love to have a home-based provider join us. We know we might have to meet in the evenings, so keep that in mind. We're willing. We're going to do it. You'll put us to shame again. So if you're interested in that, please talk to me. We also have Thriving Families, which is tackling the issue of preventing children from going into foster care. So whether that is preventing it from even being a need in the first place or figuring out interventions when things are getting rocky so that doesn't have to happen and families can stay together in a healthy way. We're also looking at kindergarten readiness and a data work group. So if anyone's super into data, they're kind of taken off. They got their own thing going. But these other work groups are pretty open, and we are looking for some on the ground people who understand what it's like working with kids day in and day out and what those challenges are. The Community Health Improvement Plan also is realizing, we're talking about health, right? And you often think physical health when you hear that. But they know that child abuse and neglect is a health problem. It is a health issue, and so that is a priority for their 5-year plan. So there are going to be, different trainings, different partners that might leverage support, and also childcare costs are another issue. And we know that that's not just, there's no way to drop the cost, right? You guys can't do that. So figuring out where that middle, when you guys, childcare providers can't pay any less and parents can't pay any more, where does that middle come from? And so looking at creative ways for that. So just know you've got people on your side and people that are working really hard alongside you, because we know you're already giving it 110%. If you want to join in, we'd love to have you. So with that in mind, we got to keep you guys doing well because you're doing really good work, and we want to keep you in the field because we value you. And self-care is really important for that. You guys who got scholarships kind of talked about how you do self-care. I thought that was kind of fun. How you encourage your staff to do self-care. Oh, I didn't put all the words in there, but you can read the bottom ones, they're important. And how you encourage calmness in children, which I thought was also really cool. So thank you for filling that out. It wasn't just a hoop you had to jump through for your scholarship. With that in mind, I'm going to pass it off to Amy Foster-Wolferman, who's really going to dig in and talk about self-care, and we can do some activities with you guys today. So thanks so much, and let's welcome Amy to the stage.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to the State of the Young Child. I was once a preschool teacher. My background is in early childhood education and early childhood education. I was also a special education teacher for quite a while. And I do now work for the National Native Children's Trauma Center at the University of Montana. And at the Trauma Center, we really focus on helping identify the impacts of trauma on children and families and communities, and ways to better support children in different organizations. And being that my background is in education and working with different schools from early childhood through high school, the primary focus of my work is supporting educators. So I do a lot of work with positive behavioral supports and bullying prevention, suicide prevention, and trauma work. So I am here to talk about a very important aspect of trauma, and that is the impacts that working with kids with trauma can have on ourselves, the care providers. First, I want to check, can you hear me in the back? Okay, good. Good. So as early childhood educators, our jobs are so stressful. We are so busy. The demands of our little kiddos are so great. They're so full of energy. They're always moving. They are not easy, right? And then they can often exhibit, some more than others, some challenging behavior. And I know that was the topic of the night, right? Supporting kids with challenging behaviors. Tonight? Yeah, okay. Were you listening to the first training? Yeah. And so I think that we need to allow ourselves just the okay to realize that it can be really stressful, and it's normal to experience stress. Stress can also be, I'm just going to move forward here, stress can also be helpful as well as harmful, right? There's a lot of different types of stress, and if we didn't have it, we might not accomplish things, or we might not work quite as hard to get things done well. So stress can be helpful, but we also just need to pay attention and notice the impacts that it's having on us and our mental health, our well-being, our overall sense of well-being. And if we get to the point where it becomes harmful, that's where we need to step in and make some change. Okay. Oh, I had to head there. So stress too is really, it can be situations that impact us emotionally and physically. And it can be a situation, but it's also our perception of that situation that makes it stressful. So this becomes really important when we think of self-care and how we can really work on our mindset and reframing our thoughts around the stress that we're dealing with to then become, to deal with that self-care. So there's stress, right? But there's also different levels of stress. There's our everyday stress where we may get overwhelmed, or we may have just so many demands coming at us that we start to feel stress. But there's also the impacts of working with kids with challenging behaviors who may be exhibiting challenging behaviors due to trauma. And so working with a lot of children and families who've experienced trauma can lead to secondary traumatic stress, or otherwise known as vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, or sometimes burnout. And they are quite different. Compassion fatigue is really just that weariness that comes from caring. We care so much about the kids that we work with and the situations that they are maybe experiencing, And over time, that can really wear us down, that sense of care. And when we are experiencing compassion fatigue, we really still want to do our jobs, we want to show up, we really do care about those kids and the families. With secondary traumatic stress, it's compassion fatigue, and it's that impact of caring, but it's taking it to a deeper level where we actually start to take on symptoms of traumatic stress ourselves. And some of those symptoms include sort of re-experiencing situations of trauma, sort of racing thoughts in our minds, hyper-arousal, so we might start to feel jumpy or easily agitated. We also might start to feel like we're checking out more often, a little more numb to the emotions that we're trying to avoid because of the uneasiness or discomfort that they may provide. So secondary traumatic stress, much like compassion fatigue, but it's actually starting to take on those PTSD-like symptoms of the clients or the children and families that we care for. And then there's burnout, and burnout is different in that it's not so much about that connection and caring with the children and families that we're working with, but about the impact of the stress of our jobs. And it's cumulative over time, and it's often related to not feeling supported enough, not having enough resources to do the job that we're being asked to. And if we don't find ways to combat that stress or take care of ourselves, then we can really burn out. And at this point, if we're truly burnt out, we just don't care anymore. And oftentimes, it's either changing situations in our job and getting more support, or it's moving possibly to another job. All right, so stress, we have compassion fatigue, we have secondary traumatic stress. We also have compassion satisfaction. And compassion satisfaction is that maybe we are working with kids who are really challenging to us and families that are challenging to us, but we get a lot of joy out of knowing that the work that we do makes a difference. And the change might be slow and it might be hard to perceive, but we do know that we do notice those little tiny baby steps towards progress and change and positive outcomes. So just some definitions. But what are the symptoms? And so we're going to look at symptoms of stress and look at symptoms of compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress, because one of the first things that we need to do when we're addressing our own self-care, I think I put it here, is identifying the stress, how and what it is in our lives and how we experience it. How does it come out in us? And it can be hard to see. Sometimes other people see it in us before we see it in ourselves. Right? So, laughter there. I know my daughter is really good at detecting my stress. And yeah, and that's a good thing. I know when she says, "Mom, you just seem a little stressed. Why don't you come over and let me rub your back?" I'm like, fantastic. Thanks for noticing. Keep going. So there's so many different symptoms of stress, but this is just a brief summary and overview of a few of the different areas or impacts. So I'm going to start with the emotional piece. In terms of the impact of stress on our emotions, we can start to feel more sad, down, slightly depressed. We might feel overwhelmed with the stress that we're dealing with, not having ways to combat that. We might start to feel more irritable and short with others that we love. And we might not often feel the experiences of joy or relaxation. Anybody? But these emotions can lead us to thoughts around can impact our ability to concentrate, right? When we're starting to feel down, if we're starting to have racing thoughts, it can really impact our ability to focus, concentrate, be present, be engaged, and impact our memory. We can have new worries, and this other aspect that's similar to PTSD is those racing thoughts, right? We're constantly thinking and focusing or even obsessing on the stresses that we're dealing with in our life, right? So there's impacts emotionally, cognitively, physically, right? We might find ourselves more sick more often. We might find ourselves having increased heart rate, faster breathing, a lot of different illnesses that we might discover with our stress. And then behaviorally, we might see changes in our habits, right? So we might have an impact. We might eat more, we might eat less. We might develop habits like biting our nails, all kinds of stress habits. And it can really impact our sleep. There's a lot of us in the US today that have trouble with sleep, increased medication use for sleep. And then we might turn to using alcohol and other substances to help us cope, right? To help us bring us to that state of calm and relaxation that we're not allowing ourselves to experience because we're not taking good care of ourselves. Okay, anybody? Yeah, all of us, yeah. So it's normal, it is so very, very normal to experience stress. Compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress include all of those stress symptoms, but there are some additional pieces, and this is just a very short overview. There are some personal impacts, so we might start to kind of change our way of thinking about others. So knowing that a lot of our kids are experiencing tough things, bad things in our world, we might start to distrust or mistrust others. And this can really impact our relationships with our friends and our family and our support systems. We might start to feel more isolated. We might not turn to others for support. So a lot of ways personally, we might mentally start to become more jaded or cynical about our world. Emotionally, we might not only be sad or down more often, but actually more depressed. We might start to feel this sense of hopelessness about the world and our future. Again, emotional numbing. And then physically, we might also take on some of that hyperarousal. We might also have this sort of lethargy or slow, lowered energy. And then here, this bottom corner is the impacts on workplace. So you see, we might start to avoid things that make us feel or remind us of the traumas that our kids and families that we're working with. We might avoid anything that reminds us of that. So people, families, we might not go up and stand by the door to greet. We might be a little bit more avoidant of that. We might start to avoid meetings. We might start to miss appointments or show up late. So there's a lot of impacts that both stress and also the impacts of working with kids with trauma can have on us emotionally, physically, behaviorally, in our actions, in our social life. The list goes on, also spiritually. So this first step in addressing secondary traumatic stress, general stress, and self-care is to identify those symptoms in ourselves, right? How are we doing? How is our work impacting us? How are we doing physically, emotionally, socially, relationally? And one helpful tool is the Professional Quality of Life, and it's just 30 items, and it looks at those different areas of compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, burnout, and also compassion satisfaction. So I just wanted to share that resource with you as a way to help with that identification of what is my own stress. And then another way is just to think about yourself in terms of what am I like when I'm at my best? What am I like physically when I'm at my best? Socially, emotionally, all of those different domain areas. What am I like when I'm at my best? And then to think, kind of jump ahead and think about what am I like when I'm at the end of my rope? Right? I'm really struggling. I've lost it. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm not handling things well. What does that specifically look like in those different domain areas? So again, socially, emotionally, relationally, what does that look like? But then this really important piece is the in-between. It's the warning signs. So what do I look like when I'm starting to get stressed, or I'm on my way towards reaching the end of my rope? What does that look like? So I do have a handout for you if you could take a peek. There are examples of what one might look like at their best on the front side, what one might look like when they're at their worst, when they've lost it, and then what one might look like when they're on their way to losing it or being at the end of the rope. And on the back side, so I don't have one in front of me, but so I'll just ask for some volunteers. Can someone just share out loud with the group some of the physical, emotional, social, relational examples there for when you're at your best? Just out loud. I know you can all see it, but just to get the conversation going, what are some things that are on that worksheet when you're at your best? Anybody willing? What's that? Well hydrated. Well hydrated. So physically, I'm drinking water. What else is on there? Sleeping, getting good, that solid 8 hours. Exercising, absolutely, moving that body.
Positive mindset.
Okay, looking at things with that positive lens. We're not at that state of hopelessness.
Being patient with your children.
All right, great. Yeah, being patient, not being quick to explode. Great. Can we move to the end of the rope? What are some things, what might you look like when you're at the end of your rope? Tired. Okay, totally tired, loss of energy. Withdrawn, isolated, not connected with friends and family. Panicky. What was that one? Panicky. Okay, feeling panicked. Yeah, operating not the opposite of that relaxation, but really high levels of anxiety and panic. Constantly sick, run down. Right. Yeah, we know this stuff, right? But what I want to challenge you to do right now is to think about your own signs of when you're really overwhelmed, overstressed, and not coping well, right? And so what I want you to think about is sometimes when we're stressed, we're not giving ourselves enough time to sort of decompress or give ourselves permission to have some downtime that is just for ourselves. We're always, as care providers, we are really, 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 really good at taking care of others, but often forget to do that for ourselves. So just think, and that first step in creating self-care activities and plans is to identify it, notice it, right? We're so busy looking out for others and dealing with all the challenges that come at us in our world that we overlook into that internal self-reflection of how are we really doing. So the backside of this worksheet is a place where you can identify what you look like when you're at your best. And maybe it's something you've never thought of, right? I don't know. What do I look like when I'm at my best physically? What do I look like when I'm at my best emotionally or cognitively? You know, am I engaging in conversations with friends, maybe intellectual conversations that keep me inspired? Am I journaling? What is it that you do when you're at your best? And sometimes you have to think back to our past to discover, I really, really was doing well when I was engaging in that particular hobby on a regular basis. I've really let that go. So I would like we do have the time here to spend, about 3 minutes for you to think of what you look like at your best, your worst, and then those warning signs. Ready, set, go for it. What are some things that you came up with? What are some things that you came up with in terms of what am I doing or what do I look like when I am at my best? Anybody willing to share? Yes, in the back.
I like to go running a lot.
All right, so when you're at your best, you're running a lot. Awesome. What else?
Relaxing.
Taking time to relax. Yeah, actually doing that. Yeah, nice.
That I actually want to read.
Okay, yeah. Carving some time out to read a book for pleasure, for joy. All right. One more.
Interacting more with my child instead of isolating.
Okay, yeah, interacting more. So maybe when we're at our end of our rope, things might look a little bit different. And so when we come home from a really difficult day at work, what do we do when we walk in our door and our kids are ready for our attention? If we're highly stressed, we might not throw off our bag and get on the floor and start, ready to roll and play and sing and read books. We might want to go to the back room and take a little break, right? So do we have that energy? So let's do that. Let's jump to the end of the rope. Is anybody willing to share an example of a physical, emotional, social, spiritual impact when you're at the end of your rope? And again, I think this is something that where we don't often notice this in ourselves. Yeah.
Live on coffee and sugar.
Okay, increased use of coffee and sugar. Yeah.
I eat my feelings.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe not as expressive, just stuffing those feelings in. Yeah.
I forget everything. Like I forget where I put my keys. I forget yeah. I forget so much.
Yeah, where did I park my car? I have no clue. It's been a long day. Okay. Yeah.
I have no patience with myself or anybody else.
Okay. Yeah, more quick-tempered, no patience. Yeah. Right. So what about that in-between time? This is the hard, when we're just starting to move in that direction. And a colleague of ours shares this story, and he doesn't mind if I share it too, but he spent some time in a small town, a rural town, where he was working with Child Protective Services and experiencing a lot of child removal from homes, and it was a very high-stress job and situation, and he and his family had gone to a social gathering, a big bonfire, great friends getting together, and one of his friends said, "So how you doing, buddy?" And he said, "Oh, things are going pretty good. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, keeping busy." And he said, "My wife looked at me and she just gave me the eye like, are you kidding me? You're not," she didn't say it, but he said that was one of the longest car rides home that we'd had in a while. And it was just that sort of point that he hadn't stopped to realize, had no real idea how the work was impacting him, but it was very obvious to the others around. And so like my daughter, I didn't notice that I was showing my stress or even feeling my stress until she told me so. So what are those in-betweens? How do we notice? How do we pick up on when we're about to blow, I guess we could say?
Becoming more withdrawn.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe it's not snapping and where you might be at the end of your rope, but you're just more withdrawn. Not interacting. Great example. Any others? Yeah.
Negative thoughts.
Okay. So noticing that I'm starting to think negatively about situations that are happening, and that's a really important one to notice, because that's something that we actually have control over. Some things like intense emotion. It's hard to change very quickly, notice and just change, but we can catch our negative spiraling down thinking. We can actually step in and reframe that thinking, which can have an impact on how we feel. So that's a great thing to notice, and where we can apply some strategy too. Okay. So I think you get it, right? None of this is rocket science, right? It's just that it's the intention, and it's actually taking that step of noticing. So after noticing our signs of stress, we need to make that commitment to step in and do something about it, especially when we're starting that in between, that warning time. The end zone or the end of the rope time is very important for stepping in and doing self-care. But if we can notice it early on, then we can actually prevent a lot of those maybe disrupted relationships or negative impacts that might happen when we're being very high stressed. So here's a definition of self-care on the left. Self-care is an ethical imperative. Right? We must engage in self-care as care providers. It's a must, because if we don't, it can really diminish our ability, right, to be an effective care provider and to be an accessible and available support for our loved ones, right? So we need to take that step to take care of ourselves to become a better care provider. And I love this piece on radical self-care, which is really very intentionally and frequently integrating self-care strategies into our lives. And I want to jump to this activity here. I know we're getting close to the end. What is on your plate? And so when you think of a plate and you think of all the different things that you have to do in a day, and think of a pie sitting on that plate, and how big a piece of pie is there for work? How big of a piece of pie is there for sleep? How big for social connection? How big, all the things that you do, transportation of kids. Think of all the different slices of your time in a day. And then that last question, is there a slice on your plate for self-care? For some, sometimes maybe when we're at we're best, we do have that as a focused activity. A lot of times we let it go. But what are some ways that we can intentionally integrate so that radical self-care, we're committing to it, we mean it. What are some ways that we can do that? So I just want you to take a moment and talk to your neighbor about where you fit self-care and how do you do it? Where do you find the time? And has it been a while? Just turn to your neighbor and talk about how you fit self-care into your life. We are almost done. I have to tell you, I have never tried to squeeze a presentation on secondary stress and self-care in 30 minutes, and so it's been a little bit challenging. I hate to break up discussion because that's what it's all about, right? Processing the topic and reflecting on it. Couple of ways that you integrate self-care into your day. Anybody early risers? Yeah, get up early. Oh, standing desk, nice. Okay. Dancing at the desk. Do it all day long that way. Saying, okay, it's late, I need to go to bed now. For us who tend to be more like night owls. Yeah. Other ways to integrate self-care into your day. So we have our schedules, and we have our meetings, and we have our clock and our timelines, and I've found that there's a time when I was a little better place than now, working to get back to it, but actually putting in my calendar time for self-care. So leaving at 4:30 to hit that 5 o'clock workout class, or putting it in the calendar written down. And so if it's written down, I'm more committed to it than if I just think, oh, I should probably do that today. Right? It's taking that, and it's that intentional, the radical self-care, taking that next step and knowing that I'm worth it. I need, if I take extra time to make sure that if I stay late at a meeting with someone, honor your own time and say, you know what, I know that we could keep going, but I need to leave because I have this appointment. I have an appointment with myself for self-care. Other strategies? I think, too, we need to think about self-care in terms of the difference between decompressing and rejuvenating and re-energizing. Because we can engage in activities where we're sort of downloading, we're binge watching Netflix, maybe having a little glass of wine, and those things are fine to a degree, but if we overindulge, they become harmful, right? But if we're just downloading, what we're not doing is lifting ourselves up. And sometimes it's that, okay, when I'm connected to a community group, or I'm reading, or I'm exercising, I actually feel better. So downloading, it just kind of lowers our level of stress, but we're thinking about uploading, re-energizing, and what makes us feel good and better. And thinking about people we engage with. When we spend time with them, do we feel good? Or do we sometimes, can people bring us down? And if so, can we reduce the amount of time that we spend? Or maybe it's time to say goodbye. So I want to focus on one other thing here, and that is stress is really related to our perspective of control, right? If we start to focus too much on things that are outside of our control, that can start to wear us down, make us feel overwhelmed or helpless. But if we focus on things that we can control, we tend to see that we feel a sense of relief, right? So things that are in our control, how we prioritize our work, how we respond, what we say, what we do. But when we start to focus on other people's reactions, how they feel, we can't control those things. They might frustrate us, but we can't control them. So if we're spending a lot of extra time worrying about those things that are outside of our control, it doesn't help because we can't control it. So I think keeping that in mind helps, this is something I just need to let go. Right? Sometimes we just need to say, it's out of my hands. What can I do? Let's turn this around to focusing on what do I have power and control over? I'll do that. And then finally, I just want to point out, thinking about really socially, when was the last time, who is it that you connect with and you feel good and better when you spend time with them? And when was the last time you connected with them, right? Who emotionally, how do you express yourself? Do you even notice what you're feeling on a regular basis? Do you pay attention? And what are those feelings? And do you have a way to talk with someone about them, or to journal about them, draw, do art, get that out? Because expression of emotion can have a big impact on the way that we feel and deal with stress. Physically, of course, what are we doing? Deep diaphragmatic breathing, right? We all know when we're working with our kiddos and we're trying to teach self-regulation, gosh, that helps us so much too. And it's like the quickest way to change our physiology is to take those deep breaths, right? So let's do it. And I love it. So if we're teaching it, then we're doing it. It's parallel. Right? Shifting our negative thinking to more helpful thoughts, adding in positive statements to ourselves. Okay, nobody died today. It was a successful day. No, I'm kidding. But maybe that's where you're at. And just need to find something positive about the day, something that you're grateful for. And also just telling yourself, you know this, you got this, you can do this. My husband is starting to write down on a piece of paper every day when he can remember something he's grateful for, thankful for, something positive that happened that day, and putting it in a jar. And then on New Year's Day, he opens it up and reads them all. We do it as a group, and I see a difference in his behavior and how he handles stress now that he's really intentionally focusing his mind on positive things around him. And then spiritually too, sometimes we can lose, kind of develop this anger or feeling isolated or disconnected from purpose or meaning when we're under a lot of stress, and especially if we are dealing with traumatic stress and secondary traumatic stress. And so how can we, what makes us feel connected to something larger than ourselves? And whether that's a higher power, whether that's nature, whether that's connected with community. Have we done that before and lost that connection? Is there something that it's something that we've not considered? But spiritually, we can focus on inspirational readings. There's a lot of things we can do to feel more connected and to feel like we have purpose and meaning. And then, what are our habits? What are some things that we can change, like going to bed earlier if you're a night owl, or whatever it might be. So just thinking, if you can create a self-care plan and write it down, it's much more likely that you'll follow through with it. And I don't mean to suggest that you're not doing this. I'm just sharing it as a strategy. A lot of us do these things, but then when we talk about options like this, we think, oh, I hadn't thought of that aspect of self-care. Maybe I'll add that to what I'm already doing. So anyway, I just encourage folks to create self-care plans, write them down, and if you tell somebody, too, there's a little bit of an accountability. So we often talk about self-care buddies. Oh, how's that going? How's that new Couch to 5K program that you're doing? Whatever it is that you choose to put on that self-care plan, checking in. Yeah. And so just remember that you deserve as much support and good treatment as you provide others. Us care providers are not as good at that as others, so we deserve it. And caring for ourselves, the impact is great, right? It helps our own health, longevity, energy, effectiveness as a care provider. It's critical that we engage in it. We are worth it. And so, it really is not a luxury. A lot of us think, oh, I don't have time to take a bubble bath, an hour or two bubble bath. It's not a luxury. There are small things we can do that impact us, lift us up, re-energize, and rejuvenate us. So when, where, why, how can we do it? So just go with intention, and good luck in your work. And I think I went over just a touch, sorry. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys for staying. We're going to hold you just another minute, but it's to give you prizes, so I think that will be an easy one. If you didn't enter any raffle tickets, you don't have to stick around. So Jacole and Leah here are going to start drawing. As they're getting them out, I really want to say thank you. I have been busy and not had as much capacity as normal this year, and Leah and Pam, I don't even know where Pam is. Pam's not even in the room, but they really carried so much of this, along with Jacole and Holland, Betsy and Kelly, who aren't here, all of the women at EYC right now. They all just really have made this happen, and it's really cool because we've all been working together for years now and have the routine down and just really did a great job. So hands for all of them. And here come the prizes.